But yeah, my beats they are hard.
All right, we are now recording on the cloud. Standing by to go live. 5, 2. Hello and welcome to another edition of the BCSN SportsWrap. Bryan Fulford and AD Drew here, ready to do another show. It's been a while since we've had a chance to get together. Drew, how you doing, my man?
I'm doing fine, my brother. How's it been going for you down there in Central Florida?
If I'm being honest, it's like Groundhog Day every day. So this is a welcome change, but I tell you, it's rough, man. It's rough going. But a lot of people down here in Florida seem to be excited that a lot of things are opening back up. I'm choosing to be on the little more cautious side. But you know, it is what it is, I guess, you know. Just gonna have to learn how to deal with it.
You know, not to be going off script, but I noticed that you've got your hometown Indianapolis Colts hat on. What's your opinions on their new logo, Bryan, and their new uniforms?
Oh, well, I thought you were just gonna mention the fact that this is a result of going on nearly 60 plus days without a haircut. So that's what this is about. But no, I'm. Hey, you know what's funny is the new logo design that they came up with mirrors a logo design that was created for my high school back home in Indianapolis, Indianapolis Cathedral High School. And I wish I had if I knew you were going down this route, I would have pulled up an image that was created.
There's the magic of post. There's the magic of post editing.
The magic of post editing, right. So. Yeah, you know, but I like what they did. But I saw a hat which I want to get my hands on. I just haven't seen it in the stores yet. So I think I saw something like Ty was wearing it, probably a mock design they created. And so I saw him wear that, and I was like, ooh, that's kind of fresh. I got to get my hands on that. But you know, with what I've seen with the NFL, with some of the other teams coming out with designs, what the Colts did was very subtle. You know, if you really blink, you won't even know it. So it is what it is.
Yeah, the Ram stuff sucks. I just want to throw it out there for the general audience.
Right, you used to be a diehard St. Louis Rams fan back when they were in your hometown of St. Louis. But yeah, you know, the new helmet design though, that's the one thing I do like about St. Louis. So what do you think about the off-white, what do they call it, the bone color jerseys?
I think the whole thing sucks. I'm a little bit of a traditionalist. I don't like the broken horn with the Ram logo, you know, stuff like that. You know, it is what it is. I like when they went to the old gold, I guess it was, instead of the yellow gold during the early 2000s, the greatest show on turf, the Super Bowl that they lost.
You actually like that version of the gold and navy blue? You were probably the one person that liked that, huh?
Yeah, I've always been partial to the old gold in any uniform scheme.
Nah, I just thought there was too much. I thought there was too much history in the royal blue and the yellow gold to go with that navy blue and old gold.
I like the navy blue and white that they went to for the last couple of years. You know, I thought that was a pretty decent design and color scheme.
It helped that when you guys changed, when they made that change, it helped that they were winning. So it did kind of add to it a little bit, the fact that, hey, we're winning, we're getting to the Super Bowl, we won a Super Bowl, you guys were the greatest thing on turf. So it helped. You know, if you guys had sucked, that whole combination of that era would have really sucked. You know what I'm saying?
As long as the Kansas City Chiefs don't do what the Houston Rockets did when they won in the 90s, they won with the Rockets repeated in the 90s and changed their logo for the next year and almost didn't make the playoffs. You know.
Do a cartoon spaceship. Was that the cartoon spaceship?
Yes, that was a cartoon design. You know, just don't want the Chiefs to change their design. You know, you won with it, leave it alone for a few years.
The 90s were littered with those kind of bad uniform. There were some bad uniform designs in the 90s. So
what was worse, the 90s or the 70s, Bryan?
I think the 90s. The 90s were, I mean, because you had between what the Rockets did, you had the Raptors, you had Dino, you had the Milwaukee Bucks, you had the Hawks. There were some bad designs, in my opinion, back then.
Yeah, but the 70s, you had every color in the crayon box for all these different teams' uniforms. So you had a 64-pack of Crayolas between all the teams out there.
Yeah, no, it'd be nice if, speaking of the uniform designs, it'd be nice if some HBCU schools did a little tweaking with their uniforms. Obviously, who knows if you got the money to do that, but it'd be nice if, every now and then they kind of were able to create some kind of throwback design with some of their uniforms.
They buy these uniforms every 2 to 3 years. Most of these schools have signed a new contract with Nike over the last couple of years and are slowly phasing out the old uniforms, the old Russell uniforms, who had most of the HBCU contracts for the uniforms. So they've had their opportunity to freshen and to change their design on their uniforms over the last couple of years. So I hate to say it's their fault that those have not been changed or freshened up or updated over the last 3 to 5 years.
Well, I remember this past year, Grambling State went back to the uniforms that sort of had a homage to the Eddie Robinson era. I think you would have had
the red trim.
With the red trim.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a little bit different this year. I know Southern has been has tweaked their color scheme over the last couple of seasons. But Bethune has been really edgy. I give them a lot of credit. Bethune-Cookman has been really edgy the last few years with their jerseys.
Bethune is the Oregon of the HBCUs with their jerseys.
Yeah. I mean, especially going into the Florida Classic game, they seem to have a new set of helmets or uniforms for that game. It's really, really impressive. I don't know if they wear I don't even know if they wear those again. You know what I'm saying? Like there was it was like a silver helmet, white uniform with a silver trim that they wore, I think 2 seasons ago, maybe 2 or 3 seasons ago in the Florida Classic. I'm pretty sure I haven't seen that since that game. Yeah, so sorry here. Every time I keep reaching down, I'm drinking my water here, trying to make sure my animal that's around here doesn't knock my water over and just kind of ruins the whole segment. That's why I kind of keep doing that.
Gotcha.
But if you're watching this on any of our social media sites, or if you're watching it on YouTube, make sure to hit like and subscribe to our shows on YouTube. If you're watching us on any one of our other platforms, make sure you're following us on Instagram and Twitter at MyBCSN1. Also, make sure to follow the at MyBCSN1. That's where you can find the Black College Sports Network. You can also find our BCSN SportsWrap page on Facebook as well. So I want to encourage you to do that whenever you can. Yeah, see, damn thing always around messing around with something. All right, so AD, you and I got together. We were like, man, you know, you were pressing me. You were like, hey, we got to put something together. We got to put something down on wax. We hadn't done anything for a while. So even though, you know, the end of the, what basically is the end of the, what would have been normal academic year is upon us. The spring seasons basically came to a grinding halt back in March. And now the biggest questions that we've kind of been dealing with over the last 2 months. And it's really been all about what's going to happen in the future, what's going to happen in the fall. A lot of uncertainty. We've seen a lot of states start to open back up. We've seen a lot of back and forth about what's going to happen in the fall. You know, we still don't have a definitive yes or no from many of the states or the college campuses, the HBCU campuses, as to whether they will actually be on campus in the fall. We've seen conversations by the NCAA president, Mark Emmert, that I don't think he said this. I don't know if you heard his comments, Drew. I don't think he was saying this as a matter of fact, but I think he was just saying it doesn't make sense to have college athletics if students aren't on campus, right. Which I actually agree 100%, you know. And I think that was always one of the things that I don't think people were talking about maybe, a month ago when I think Dabo Sweeney of Clemson and some other coaches got into a little back and forth with media people about whether there was going to be football in the fall. You know, it was back when Kirk Herbstreit made his statements about he can't see there being college football back, you know. This was like, what was that, April?
Yes.
So
about second, third week of April.
Yeah. So
and I'm going to throw something else out there too. You know, a lot of these colleges have been playing around since Mark Emmert has made that statement about how they're going to not only get the athletes back on campus and get students back on campus. And I don't remember what university it was. I actually heard this on somebody else's show. There's certain universities who are like, say, your Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes coming up with some type of hybrid situation so that you go to class, maybe even an extended class on Monday. Half the people go on Mondays, half the people go on Wednesdays, and then you do Fridays from remote so that you're on campus, but you're not on campus and you're not surrounded as many people. And you could probably do some type of hybrid for your traditional Tuesday, Thursday classes also. So, you know, it's interesting to see what type of model that they're going to come up with. You know, state of California, they're not going to allow their state schools back on campus until January.
Well, that was one of the, I don't know how many, you may know, I don't know how many different state systems there are, but that was the California state system, correct?
Yes.
Which is about 23 different colleges.
Correct.
I think only about maybe 3 or 4 of them have major Division I football programs like Fresno State.
San Diego State's in there, I believe.
Yeah, San Diego State.
It does not include UCLA and
the University of California system, which is Cal Berkeley, UCLA.
There's two different. There are two
Santa
major.
Barbara.
Yeah, there are 2 major state systems in California.
Okay, yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are 2. Yeah, so that's the second, the one that contains Cal and UCLA.
Did not come out with the statement. Yeah, they did not come out with the official statement yet, but I'm pretty sure they're going to model what they did.
I would, you know what? I wouldn't put money on that, and you know the reason I say that is you because of the fact that you have the Pac-10, which is involved in those particular schools with Cal and UCLA. I think California is an interesting situation because you've got a governor you have the governor and the mayor of LA. The governor of California, the mayor of LA have really put the clamps down on that state. And it affects not only professional athletics, but of course it's going to trickle down to college athletics as well out there.
Yes.
And so how are you going to maneuver that? You know, if the Pac-12 says and comes up with a method of, let's just say the Pac-12 decides to play in the spring. What does that mean for them if the rest of college football is playing in the fall?
I got one even better for you, Bryan. What happens to the Rose Bowl?
Yeah.
I know there are a couple of other minor bowls out there. There's one in San Diego. There's one in San Francisco. I can't recall the name of them, but those are the three that go off the top of my head.
You got two of them in San Francisco. I think you even have two of them in San Diego.
Yeah. And of course the Rose Bowl.
And the Rose Bowl. So that's 5.
Right.
So, yeah.
And let's take this one step further. Is the Rose Bowl, I know they don't have the championship game this year, but is the Rose Bowl somewhere in the rotation for the college playoffs? I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah, that's a good question. In fact, I'm just kind of thinking about the last couple of years, and the fact that I don't think they have been would tend. I know the national championship game is in Tampa, if I'm not mistaken, this year, or it's in Florida. If not Tampa, it's in South Florida. But I think they may be in a rotation for a semifinal game this year.
And as you talk, I'm Googling this right
but
now.
that's an interesting development, and I guess the one thing in all of the talk that really kind of bothers me, look, we understand that one of the things they well identified about this COVID-19 virus is that it has, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you and say it has none, because that'd be uneducated. It has shown to be a very low percentage effect on that age group of college students. But you show me, AD, show me a college campus that was run by 18 to 24-year-olds. What about all the professors?
Yeah, who's going to be teaching these?
All
who's
about
be teaching all these kids? Yes,
the administrative staff, the people that work in the cafeteria, the people that work in physical plant, the people that work in the library, all of the what do you call them? The staff of most universities are probably between the ages of 30-something and 60, 70-something, if I would guess, right?
Correct.
So while you may have certain people within the media that, or people who want everybody to go back to work and say it's crazy that colleges should even consider shutting down, yeah, it may not affect 18 to 24-year-olds, but you know who is affected? It's the other people who work on campus. So the people who teach the classes, the people who cut the lights on, the people who, make sure the buildings are open, the people who cut the financial aid checks, all of that, those are the people who are affected. And guess what? Their affected percentage rate is much higher than the other group. So I think that's something people ought to really think about that, and at least maybe not be so flip when the discussion of whether college campuses should open, because I know that the mindset that everyone wants us to be in is, hey, we have to learn how to live with this. And I do agree. I think there's a point now where we have to learn how to live with this virus that's out there. And I don't know if it's just floating around everywhere or if it's in certain spaces. I'm going to be honest with you. But
Bryan,
that's where, that's where we have to, that's where I have to get. You sound like you found something there. You jump in there.
Yes. Championship game this year will be played at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami Gardens, Florida on January 11th, 2021. Semifinal games, January 1st, 2021, the Rose Bowl and the Sugar Bowl.
Yeah. So, you might have to, the Rose Bowl may have to give up there. Who knows? I mean, it's a lot of unknowns. There's going to be a lot of negotiating going on, but.
And those two are scheduled again to host after the 23 season.
Yeah. Well, somebody may have to switch up and rotate their schedule.
Just so you know, the 2021 is scheduled. The Orange Bowl and the Cotton Bowl will have the semifinal, and your favorite stadium, Lucas Oil Stadium, will have the championship after the 21 season in January of 22. And the following year, it will be the Peach Bowl and the Fiesta Bowl, which it was last year, with the championship game being in the new LA Rams Stadium, SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, California.
Yeah.
So those are the ones that are on the books right now. That Rose Bowl, Sugar Bowl, the 23-24 championship game will be held at NRG Stadium in Houston, Texas.
Let's transition a little bit to, while we're still talking about sort of the financials and just the financial life of just the effect that this COVID-19 pandemic is having on the athletic and sports world. Obviously, we see what's going on in professional sports, but some interesting things are coming up in college athletics. We haven't seen any major news as it pertains to HBCUs. But I think there have been two different stories that have come out, which, if you see them on the surface, you have to start thinking, if it's affecting this school and these conferences, then at some point, when is it going to trickle down and possibly affect HBCUs? And so one of the stories I'm talking about, AD, is the MAC, I think it's the Midwest Athletic Conference.
Yes.
Is it the Midwest Athletic? I just always know it as the MAC. So
correct.
Okay, so the MAC came out with a statement this past week that they are eliminating the conference tournaments in several sports. And those particular sports, men's soccer, men's tennis, women's lacrosse, softball, and baseball, they're eliminating the conference tournaments and going strictly to regular season champion, or regular season record will determine the champion. And then they also decided that with their men and women's basketball tournament, they're only taking or only playing a tournament with the top 8 teams. So I guess they used to do what the SWAC did this past year, which is they used to have on-campus games and maybe like the first round. And then I guess when it got to maybe the semifinals or the quarters, they had it at a neutral site. Well, they're just going to take the top 8. I think they're even advancing. They're changing the regular season schedule, so there'll be a 20-game regular season schedule, which also happens to be something that the Big Ten is doing. They're going to a 20, or maybe it's something the Big Ten already did. They're going to a 20-game schedule. I don't know, AD, offhand, do you know how many teams are in the MAC?
No. I can find out for you.
But as I was saying, the 8 teams in the men and women's basketball, the top 8 teams in the men and women's basketball tournament will be going into the tournament. And so it brings up an interesting point that I think you have to look at and ask yourself, for as it relates to HBCU conferences, could we see the MEAC, SWAC, CIAA, SIAC, could we see those conferences starting to give some serious consideration to eliminating some conference tournaments in the effort to help schools save money? It should be noted that the MAC was reported sometime back in mid-April, AD, the MAC was one of 5 schools that requested financial relief from the NCAA, along with the American Athletic Conference, Mountain West, Sun Belt, and Conference USA. Essentially, those are your quote-unquote group of 5 football conferences, if I'm not mistaken. So we talk about the financial impact that COVID-19 and this pandemic is having on athletics. You got the group of 5 in Division I asking for financial help. You got the MAC eliminating conference tournaments. And so, you know, I can't help but go through and wonder if, you know, when I go back and look at 2019, obviously the MEAC, for example, didn't have a baseball tournament this 2020. But let's just go back to 2019, the MEAC baseball tournament, which was in Daytona Beach at, I think it's Jackie Robinson Field or Stadium. You basically had 8 teams participate in this tournament over the course of 4 days. Now, I don't know about, you know, I saw a little bit of this tournament, but I'm not sure that the tournament was well attended. I mean, there may have been 500 people there, may have been. I don't think they hit anywhere near capacity or half of what that stadium holds. And unfortunately, I don't have the numbers on what that stadium holds, but I'm just using that as an example of when you have low attendance numbers at conference tournaments like baseball, volleyball. I'm looking for other where you have low attendance. Softball, yeah,
tennis.
softball, tennis,
Golf,
yeah.
if you offer golf.
Yeah, I don't know if they had golf in there or not, but those are the 3. You know,
even conference track meets.
Yeah, I mean, but you know, I don't know. Track and field probably did better. You know, honestly, probably track and field did better than some of those other sports. But I think just in terms of what you ask teams to do, you ask teams to come out to travel. You know, say a team from DC, Howard University, had to come all the way down to Daytona Beach for a baseball tournament. You know, how many people are traveling with the team? You know, is it worth traveling for a tournament like that? What are your thoughts on that, AD? As we kind of had this little discussion a little bit earlier.
First of all, going back to your first question, Bryan, the MAC has 12 public schools. Those 12 public schools are Akron, Bowling Green, State University of New York at Buffalo, Kent State, Miami, and Ohio University. That's the Eastern Division. Ball State, Central Michigan, Eastern Michigan, Northern Illinois, Toledo, and Western Michigan in the other division. So
yeah, so 12 schools. So basically your bottom 4 teams are basically sitting at home, and they, you know, no need to send those anyway. And I think that's something that the MEAC and the SWAC had already started doing with, you know, with their men and women's basketball tournaments, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and you saw the GCAC follow suit with that this year, Bryan. And I thought the MEAC took everybody, except for, of course, this year where they had one team sat home because of sanctions.
You might be right, but the numbers. I mean, look at the attendance numbers. I mean, at some point, I have said this before. I continue to harp on this. I don't understand. Well, I guess I understand, but it doesn't make financial sense to me for the MEAC, the SWAC, to have an open field tournament where your best team may potentially get knocked off and end up as a first in, last four, whatever, that plays in a play-in tournament. Because this year, if the MEAC and SWAC would have had their full season, it's very likely that whoever would have came out of the MEAC and SWAC were going to end up playing in Dayton in the first four. You know, that was most likely going to happen. And so with that happening, to me, it made no – and I've said this before, I don't even know why you even have a end of the season tournament. You know, I think they started doing it because you wanted to get on ESPN. Well, I mean what? ESPN's going to put you on like ESPN2, or worse nowadays, they're going to stick you on ESPN Plus or ESPN3. They're not going to put you on the main ESPN network. You know, why run the risk of your best team getting knocked out in the semifinal and then eventually not making to the tournament? Because the NCAA Division I setup is totally different than Division II setup, correct? So that whole setup just yields itself to you're only going to get one team. You know, in Division II, the CIAA, the SIAC, if, for example, Benedict women, who had a great season this past year, if they had lost in the tournament, you know, it's very likely that the Benedict women would have still gone on to the Division II tournament. But
excuse me, that's because they go off of rankings in Division II. If you're ranked in the top 8, you get to go to the tournament no matter where you're at. And the only way you sneak in is if you're a conference champion. You can bump somebody. If you're not in the top 8 and you're a conference champion, you bump number 8. And then then 7, et cetera, et cetera.
Right. The flip to that is, look what happened in the MEAC. Bethune-Cookman's women lost in the first round of the tournament. Bethune-Cookman's women's season was done. Here's a team who had won 15 games in a row. They had like a 20-plus win season, had probably only lost maybe a handful of games all year. But I think, bam, they were done. There was no NCAA for the year. They got invited to the NIT, but they weren't going to the NCAA tournament. You know, they lost to the 9 seed, a playing game team. I mean, all props to Maryland Eastern Shore. You know, so that's the big difference. So I've said that before, but you know, AD, it's an interesting thought about, you know, over the next month or two, as the planning really starts to ramp up for the fall, will you see the MEAC, SWAC, will they make some considerations, even if they just did it for a couple of years, 2-3 year window, to try to see if they can help schools recover and save some money? Will they consider, you know, eliminating some conference tournaments? I think it's definitely on the table for them to consider.
I think more at the Division II level, definitely. You have to strongly consider it. Let's take the SIAC basketball tournament. It is stretched out over 6 days, 5 to 6 days when it is. It starts usually on Monday or Tuesday. And it goes all the way up until Saturday and or Sunday. Just depends on how they flow with their calendar. CIAA tournament. Also, you know, the CIAA tournament doesn't stretch their tournament out as far, but they use 2 venues for, I know, the first round, if not the first 2 rounds, which 2 venues, 2 costs. Let's be realistic about it. If you are going to take a tournament, you know, take the top 8, take the top 4. You can even do the top 6. You know, give the conference winners a bye, and let the next 2 kind of battle it out if you're trying to save money. Have those first round games on campus like the GCAC did this year, like the SWAC has done in the past. The SWAC, first of all, SWAC has 10 teams. They only take 8 to the tournament, and then they have the first round on campus. So if you're lucky enough to have both your men's and women's team hosting, you hosted a doubleheader, and it may be some people traveling back and forth, but I think the SWAC and the GCAC.
It's a 2-day tournament. It's like for the SWAC.
It's a 2-day neutral site tournament.
Friday, it's a 2-day, right? Friday were the semifinals. Championship games played on Saturday,
which cuts down on your cost. Instead of having probably, let's take the 8 teams that make it in the SWAC. Well, everybody played in the tournament, either men's or women's, I believe, except Grambling this year, Brian. Don't correct me on that. But let's assume that all 10 teams have a representative, either men or women, in the SWAC tournament. You have a whole city, wherever that city is. You're probably going to have 8 to 9 of those teams having to travel to that tournament to be there. So you have hotel costs, bill costs. You have hotel costs. You have bill costs. Just bus, the bus to get you there, or the buses to get you there, because normally, especially at the Division I level, men and women do not travel on the same bus for space purposes. Right. So those are 3 basic costs that you're gonna have while you're going on to those tournaments. When you do that hotel reservation, you're doing that hotel reservation assuming you're going to be there for the entire tournament. 9 times out of 10, they're not going to let you check out early, or if you check out early, you got to wait till they send you that check back for the difference. You're scheduled to be there 5 days, you're only there for 2 days. And throw in something else, Brian. Most teams, when they go to these other cities, they have to find somewhere to practice. They have to find somebody's high school to have some type of practice in. Yeah. And as you go further and further along in the tournament, it becomes a challenge. Where the first day is probably the worst day. You get an hour for shooting around. Everybody's going to do their shooting around. But we saw it with the GCAC tournament. How many people actually got to town in time for their shooting around time, their scheduled shooting around time? Only a couple of them.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it definitely is. It's one of those challenges, and I mean, I don't know. Like I said, the logistics of doing all of it and trying to help schools save money.
The conference will make more money, actually. Yeah, you're gonna make some city. They're not gonna pay you as much for the tournament because you don't have as many teams coming, because you don't have potentially as many heads and beds as I like to call it, because all the city wants you to do is they want you to pay for hotel rooms. They want you to buy food in their particular city.
All right. So there were a couple other stories out there, but we need to take a break. We're going to take a break, pause for the cause. When we come back, got a few other stories to talk about, as well as talk about a big hiring in the world of HBCU men's basketball. You're watching and listening to the BCSN Sports Wrap with Bryan and AD. We'll be back right after these words.
I have in me the ability to make you a better you. So if you work hard, focus, stay on point, you can do anything. Trust me.
We made this track to tell everybody they can follow their dreams.
Welcome back to the BCSN Sports Wrap. Brian Fulford and AD Drew over here. We're back. We got another. I just wanted to finish up the previous, conversation. I mentioned there were 2 different stories related to college athletics and financials that I thought should really be paid attention to by the HBCU sports community. And so while one story was the MAC eliminating conference tournaments, I think the other story that should sort of be paid attention to is the fact that Florida Tech, a Division II school in Florida here, down where I live, not far from me, I think, over in Melbourne, Florida. They chose to discontinue their football program, which a football program that really they started in 2011. So they hadn't even been around a full decade. And, by all accounts, they had done a good job of sort of raising money, I think, and they had built a pretty decent facility for a Division II program. But the school decided that the financial cost outweighed what they were willing to invest in because of the pandemic. And now Florida Tech, I think by eliminating the football program, I think they were saving at least somewhere in the ballpark of $3 to $4 million. And Florida Tech is a private school. So, without money from donors, sponsors,
tuition.
Yeah, they're in a totally different situation than some of the public schools, but we do know there are some private HBCUs in the Division II level. Hell, there's even one in Division I, obviously, Bethune-Cookman.
Howard, Hampton,
yeah. So I just thought that was an interesting story. And, besides Florida Tech, earlier a month, I want to say a month or 2 months earlier, you had Urbana University in the Division II level. They went a similar route. Now, I think they closed their entire school, if I'm not mistaken. I think I don't know if it was just a football program. I think the whole school might have closed. But then you also had Jacksonville University, but those are private schools. Jacksonville was an FCS program. Those are private schools.
Keep in mind, Jacksonville closed pre-pandemic.
Right. They closed at the end of December. Right.
Well,
they closed
football.
Yeah, they closed their football program in the end of December. So I just thought it was interesting. And Florida Tech, they were competing in the same conference with Valdosta in the GSC, if I'm not mistaken. So I don't have their record over the past few years pulled up, but I do know that if you start thinking about schools closing football programs, like you're saying schools closing, I should say schools suspending or discontinuing their football programs, it's one of those worries that, how are HBC, if there's no football season, and that's a big if that, it's like no one wants to say it because we hope that doesn't happen. But who survives if there's no football season for a lot of the HBCUs? And is there a difference between the public and private schools on the lower level, the Division II level? I thought it was something to think about. And I think also, AD, just recently, the University of Akron chose to discontinue three Olympic sports, which really only affected about 32 student athletes plus the coaches and staff. And they were saving $4 million. And that's a MAC school.
4.5, if I remember the number.
4.5, yeah. So, and again, we haven't seen any, during the pandemic, I want it to be noted, unless you've seen something I haven't, AD, I haven't seen any HBCUs come out and say, we're discontinuing X, Y, and Z sport. Nobody's come out and said that yet, but it makes you you got to feel a little bit nervous and start to wonder that as board of trustees and presidents and whoever's making these decisions at a lot of these campuses start having these meetings and start projecting and planning and thinking about what might happen in the fall, is what's the likelihood that something like this could happen?
My 2 cents on it, Bryan. First of all, let's take Florida Memorial, who is starting a football program this fall. Is this truly the best time for them to try to kick off a football program? I'm pretty sure you've got plenty of people who are possibly second guessing themselves. Now, you've got an influx of talent in the state of Florida with Jacksonville dropping its football program and Florida Tech dropping its football program. They may be potentially looking to transfer
Oh,
to
they
a
should be
Florida
they
Memorial.
should be on the phone right now. Yeah,
Exactly.
Florida Memorial's on the phone right now. Contact.
Hey, go through, pull their roster off the sports information page before they delete the roster off the sports information page. That should have been the first thing you were doing as a Florida Memorial coach, in addition to checking the transfer portal. But Florida Memorial is a private school. Also, let's keep that in mind. They are a private school down in Miami Gardens, Florida. So is this the best time for them to do this? Just take another school in the state of Florida, right up the road from you, Bethune-Cookman. This pandemic may have been a blessing in disguise because of the federal relief that was afforded to some of these universities. It kind of helped put them over the top when they were facing serious financial problems, raising the necessary money to keep their accreditation. I believe it was somewhere in the number of $8.5 billion. And with the relief that they received from the CARES Act, they were able to get up over that magical number that they needed to stay afloat. And 364 days a year, I love Bethune. There's one day that I don't like Bethune, but whether I like them, whether I don't like them, I do not want to see another HBCU close. Like I saw 2 universities close within about an hour and a half of me in Selma, Alabama, being Selma University and Concordia over the past 3 to 4 years. What you're gonna see, Bryan, is 2 things. The schools who are in academic trouble, this pandemic is going to expose it even further. Those who were, quote unquote, living paycheck to paycheck, robbing Peter to pay Paul to cover expenses, well, this is going to expose it more than anything else right now. That's number one. Number 2, the private schools are going to probably be the ones, in my opinion, affected a little bit more than the public schools. The public schools have state funding to fall back on. They know no matter what, they're going to get X amount of dollars from the state. Now, that number may be adjusted year to year based upon the state budget, but they know when the state appropriates their budget, they're going to get X amount of millions of dollars for their university. The private schools have to heavily rely on their endowment and their donations in order to survive. And speaking of endowment, those schools with a strong endowment, such as a Morehouse, such as a Howard, those are the schools that are going to be in position to sustain any type of long-term effects. Let's be real, Bryan. Most of our HBCUs get their athletic budget off of, you remember it, Bryan, what's this extra money that I got to pay on my bill? That student activity fee. Mm-hmm. Now, if you do not have students on campus or have as many students on campus, I'm taking online courses. You can't charge me a student activity fee because I'm not student activity in.
That's a good point. There'll be a lot of people who be writing checks short. They're like,
I'm not paying a student activity fee if I'm not on campus to be able to go to the football games that you get in for free as a student, to go to the basketball games that you get in for free as a student, to use the student union, the intramural center, the workout centers, and all the things that come along with those student activity fees that you pay as a student. I'm not there.
Yeah.
I'm going to World's Gym or whatever gym in my town to work out. I'm going to the YMCA for my intramural or whatever the case may be. So that's money that these schools will lose. But you're going to have the same amount of athletes on campus. Right. Ultimately, it may affect scholarship numbers. You may not be able to fully fund all your scholarships. Everybody has to keep this in mind. You get X amount of scholarships per sport, per level. That does not mean that the university has to fund all those scholarships. And we'll take Savannah State, for instance. You know, Division II football, you're allotted 36 scholarships. Savannah State only funds 30 scholarships. So maybe after this pandemic, things like that, they may only fund 25 scholarships because of financial shortfalls. There are a bunch of different economic factors that need to go that will go into these. The strong will survive. I'm not worried about that. It's going to be those marginal institutions who were already facing financial problems, those who were saying, hey, you got to make your athletic budget, you got to do this, you got to do that in order to survive. You're going to see a lot more coaches, Bryan, coaching multiple sports. Instead of having it's going to almost be the high school model. Instead of having a football coach who's the wide receiver coach only, and all he does, he's the full-time wide receiver coach and recruits and does all this stuff. He may be the assistant baseball coach. He may be the baseball coach. He may be the tennis coach. He may be the track coach. You know, things along that line. You're going to see cost savings. Those are going to be cost savings. It's cheap to give somebody an extra $10,000 to coach a second sport than to hire somebody in at $40,000 to coach that sport full time.
Wow, that's an interesting. That's an interesting thought, interesting angle. We'll have to kind of keep our eyes open to see what happens with that. Let's transition, AD, from talking a little bit about the economics and the effect of what might happen, and turn our attention to things that have happened in HBCU news. And probably the biggest headline over the past week has to be the new hiring for Alabama State men's basketball program. They have a new head coach, and he is Mo Williams. And if that name sounds familiar, it's because Mo Williams is an NBA champion, played 14 seasons in the NBA. Most notably, he won that championship. I believe he won that championship with the Cavaliers, if I'm not mistaken, right? In 2016.
That would be correct.
Yeah, and so Mo ends up coming back to the state of Alabama, which, you know, as we were looking at the hire when it first happened, AD, you know, we were kind of a little surprised. I think when you hear a former NBA player being brought in to head your program, I think the some of the thoughts in most people's minds, I'm sure, was, okay, you know, what's his tie to the school? Does he have any ties to the school or to the area, the community? What's his, maybe then secondly, it might go to what's his coaching background? And so what you find a guy who, first off, Mo played at the University of Alabama back in 2001 to 03. And he played under Mark Gottfried at Alabama. Mo was the Sporting News National Freshman of the Year. He was the SEC Freshman of the Year when he came in that year. The team went to the second round of the NCAA tournament. He actually only played 2 seasons at Alabama. After his second season, he declared for the 2003 NBA draft. But the name Mark Gottfried is significant because when Mo hung up the basketball shoes, that's where he ended up going to sort of get his coaching chops underneath him. And so he most recently finished his second year at the California State University at Northridge, where he was an assistant coach under Mark Gottfried on his staff. And so interesting that during those couple of seasons, he recruited a couple of pretty well-known kids, a couple of kids who actually had some pretty good seasons over at Cal State, Northridge. And so I'm not sure. Let's see. Mo is from Mississippi. Is that where he's from, AD?
That would be correct. I don't know what part, but I know he's from Mississippi.
So when we talk about he's got SWAC ties, SWAC roots, being from Mississippi, having gone to a school in Alabama, he is there's probably within that recruiting radius, there are people who know Mo Williams. There are probably coaches who know Mo Williams. Might even be coaches who played against or with him in college, or definitely people from recruiting services who remember him as a player. So I think what you get for Alabama State is, some people on the outside may be a little suspect about, here's an NBA guy. And also, let me say this, AD, he's a point guard. And I think it's well said, it's been said that, your second coach is who? Your point guard.
Your point guard.
Exactly. So your point guards are the second coaches. And so here's a guy who has a wealth of experience and knowledge on the floor. And so if he can translate that into running a program, and I think with any coach who's so new to the coaching profession, how he builds his staff is going to be key to his success early on. So finding somebody, maybe even somebody who had previous head coaching experience to be his number one assistant is going to be paramount in helping him, become the kind of coach that can win a SWAC tournament and put Alabama State in a good position. Obviously, he's going to be dealing with some great facilities over there at Alabama State. And, so what'd you think of the hire, AD, when you saw the news, Mo Williams as the new head coach for the Alabama State Hornets?
I thought it was interesting. I thought it kind of came out of left field. Did not know Mo Williams was on the list for Alabama State. Expect to see a few more Alabama State games on ESPN this year. Always seems to happen that way when HBCU gets a former NBA coach as their head coach. So definitely going to see a few more of those games. It's going to be interesting. I think you hit it on the head. The thing that's going to be the hallmark is how strong are the assistants that he is going to be able to hire. How strong will they be? How much college experience will they have? How much SWAC experience will they have? And let's be real, Bryan. He may have played basketball in Alabama at the University of Alabama, but coaching HBCU sports is a whole different animal than coaching or playing at the Division I level.
What when you say that, I hate hearing that, but give me one thing when you say that, what's that one thing? What is that one thing that separates, in your opinion? The major thing.
Travel. A lot of the Division I teams, the FCS teams, the Power 5 teams, they fly to certain games, over X amount of miles. Very rarely do HBCU teams get on a plane. That's the number one. Number two, facilities. They have dedicated practice facilities at these Power 5 schools. Most of your HBCUs, you're practicing in the gym or the arena, and you're coordinating practice times with the women's team. It's just as simple.
Or whatever else might be going on.
And during the month of October, oh my God, you not only are you coordinating with the women's team, but you're coordinating with the volleyball team who's finishing up their season October into November. So those are just two major differences that I can point out.
All right.
And well, let me give you the third one: staff. You know, when you look at the bench of a Power 5 school, you may see 5, 6, 8, 10 coaches over there. It may be the strength and conditioning coach. You've got your trainers. You've got, you got a full staff on those Power 5 teams. You go to an HBCU, you've got one, maybe two assistants and a student trainer.
The fourth thing that I think is there, and I don't know, maybe among the three things you mentioned, I would go recruiting budget. I wonder how far or where the recruiting budget would fall among your list, because obviously the ability to get out and go travel and go see kids is real paramount and real important. Speaking of recruiting for Alabama State, it's pretty interesting that on the first day, actually the news about the news of Mo Williams comes out that morning, and later that evening they pick up a surprise recruit in the name of Trace Young. Trace Young actually is a junior college player. He transferred from Wyoming. Let me take it back a little further. He came out in 2017 as the top player from the state of Kentucky, about a 6'7", 6'8", small forward. Went to Wyoming, then transferred to a junior college, and was highly sought after. And he made a bold, strong prediction that he was only going to consider HBCUs. I'm not sure what other Division I schools he had in mind or that were recruiting him, but he decided back in March, or I think it was March or April, that he was only going to consider HBCUs. And so then came his list of schools. And I want to find the list here because it's real interesting, the list of schools. So among Trace Young's list of 6, and he had a list of 6, he had Jackson State in the SWAC, Prairie View A&M in the SWAC, Mississippi Valley State of the SWAC. Then he had from the MEAC, he had A&T, North Carolina A&T, Howard, and Norfolk State. So right there, you've got, in the MEAC, among A&T and Norfolk State, you got 2 real strong programs. Howard, of course, you've got a coach up there who, even though they had a tough year this past year, he's got ties to Coach K, so you're thinking that he may get that program turned around. And then, of course, you've got Prairie View A&M, Jackson State, and then Mississippi Valley State, who, Mississippi Valley just hired last year Lindsey Hunter, former NBA player, to be I think Lindsey Hunter went to Jackson State. Is that correct, AD? If I'm not mistaken, yeah. I think Lindsey Hunter went to Jackson State before he got drafted by Detroit. But so anyway, that was Trace Young's 6 schools. He was making an announcement on Fox Sports Radio with Rob Parker and Chris Broussard's The Odd Couple Show, which is the late night 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern show. And lo and behold, he flips the script on everybody and picks Alabama State. So pretty big win for Alabama State this past week, as they secured not only Mo Williams, but they also get Trace Young.
My favorite in the thing, I have boldly predicted A&T as the school that he was going to go to with A&T because of, outside of A&T being a good school, A&T was going to give him the best of both worlds down the line. You were going to get a year as a pure HBCU school, and next year you get to go into a new conference, the Big South. which plays on ESPN.
It has more television coverage, yeah.
Right, semi-regularly, with Hampton being my number 2 on my list.
Well, he didn't have Hampton on his top 6, so that would have been just as far out of left field as him choosing Alabama State. So,
right. Well, we see he went to left field and hit a home run, going to left field.
Yeah.
But it's going to be interesting. Obviously, geography did not play a factor into his decision because you've got a kid from Kentucky who played in Wyoming, and now he's down in Central Alabama. So he's not as worried about geography. He's not going to get anywhere close to home to play on a regular. And is he just trying to do a one and done for Alabama State, or is he actually trying to complete his education at Alabama State? Who knows? I'm just saying. I'm just curious.
I think what it also when the Mo Williams hiring came out, we kind of did just kind of a roll call of former NBA players that have become head coaches in college over the past few years. And we'll just kind of go through some of the names that we came up with just recently. And I'm when we originally talked about this, I know me personally had a lot of judgment. So I'm gonna leave the judgment as to whether these were good hires or not. I'm gonna leave that out. I'm just gonna list the names in the schools. If
just
you
go over like the last 20 years or so, right?
No, I don't think. No, I think this list is relatively the last 5 years.
Last 5 years. Okay.
Yeah. So obviously the most recent name I mentioned, Lindsey Hunter, who's currently at Mississippi Valley State. You've got. I'm trying to do it in some kind of relative order. George Lynch, who we had a great opportunity to meet through the HBCUheroes.org that he's a part of. George Lynch was just this past season the coach at Clark. Apparently, he is no longer the coach there at Clark.
I think that has something to do with finances. And remember those differences that we were talking about? You remember that interview, Bryan?
Yeah.
Shoes was another issue.
Yeah. So, would you say shoes?
Remember, he mentioned shoes. He mentioned the fact that, players only had like one pair of shoes, where he used to have players have multiple practice shoes and game shoes and things of that nature. I remember that coming out in his interview.
There are high schools who get multiple – trust me, I know this for a fact. There are high schools who get multiple pairs of shoes. So, I mean, you're at a college and can't get multiple pairs of shoes for your school? That's crazy.
Don't blow them out. You screwed.
Yeah, exactly. Man, don't have a Zion situation and stuff.
Yeah.
But so George Lynch, who actually took over for Darrell Walker, another NBA player who was at Clark. So, Clark's had a nice little run of former NBA players who have actually had pretty good seasons, mind you. Jerry Stackhouse, in his first season at Vanderbilt, they went 11-21 this past year, but it's his first season. You've also got some other names that we wrote down. You got Penny Hardaway, who's over at Memphis University. I mentioned it. Danny Manning actually got blown up. He actually got let go by Wake Forest. After I don't even think it was a full 3 seasons. Kenny Anderson, who's over at Fisk University. Now I know Kenny Anderson, there were some health issues that he had. But he's still the head coach. Last I checked, last I saw, he's still the head coach. You've got Avery Johnson, who was the coach at the University of Alabama. He had a good career in the NBA, I thought. Went to the NBA Finals as a coach.
Southern grad.
Yeah, 3 of the 4 years he was at Alabama, they went to the NIT. So I think that was just a product of, sometimes it's better to not even get to the tournament than to get to the NIT. So he, 3 or 4 years kind of hurt him. Chris Mullen, who I think was at St. John's.
Yes, his alma mater.
Pat Ewing, who's at Georgetown after several years as an assistant in the NBA. Mark Price. Where's Mark Price at? Mark Price is a coach somewhere. I thought you
I think he's at a smaller school. I have to look
Smaller
that back
school.
up.
Terry Porter, the former Portland guard, he's at a small school.
Portland. He's at Portland.
Oh, he's at Portland University.
Yes.
Okay. Trying to think. Clyde Drexler. I forgot. Now this is maybe a little older. Well, actually, let me go before I even mention Clyde Drexler.
Bobby Hurley.
Huh?
Got Bobby Hurley.
You got Bobby Hurley. Yeah, who's he is
Arizona State.
Arizona State. Juan Dixon, who spent about 7-8 years in the NBA. Of course, he won a national championship with Maryland.
Our Price is at. Oh, I'm sorry. Bart Price is at Charlotte.
Okay, Juan Dixon is the head coach at Coppin State. How about Todd Day Sr.? Todd Day spent a nice little time in the NBA. He's the head coach for Lander Smith College. And so there's a nice – anybody else we missed in there? Obviously, of NBA – when you think NBA All-Stars or NBA well-known names that are coaching in college now, I mean, obviously, we remember Clyde Drexler didn't have a good 2 years at Houston. Isaiah Thomas had a bad year at Florida International.
After he had a bad career at your NBA team, Indiana.
Actually, no, Isaiah had a good –
He had one good season.
I think Isaiah was on the verge of having a good season. I forgot the background on why Isaiah got blown up in Indy, but – he was on the verge.
That wasn't the Malice in the Palace, was it?
No, that wasn't on his watch. That was – I don't know who I thought it might have been Larry Brown as the coach of that team, if I'm not mistaken. I think Larry Brown might have been the coach of that team. But anyway, so I mean, I hope that – look, it's always – you're always looking for names. And trust me, sometimes names don't mean squat. And then sometimes unknown names turn into really good coaches.
I'm going to say this, having been obviously part of the college coaching landscape, having been on the staff with a quote-unquote no name, as you just said, and having
I said unknown name. I didn't say a no name. I said
I'm saying somebody who doesn't have a marquee name. Oh. And then having been on staff with a former player in the league, NBA player, irregardless of what it is, they are only going to be as good as their assistants and as good as how they can translate what got them to the league to an 18-year-old who probably does not even know their NBA career. Most of these people that you just named, these kids that they are recruiting. Oh, you played in the league, but you played in the league at a totally different time where now these kids have a one and done mentality. When these schools hire these names, that obviously, number one, they're hiring this name to try to generate sponsorship dollars, donation dollars. Anytime you've got that.
I agree with you on that. I agree with you. There's part of that going on. I would imagine. You're hoping that you can bring this guy in and this guy's name will hopefully reach out to somebody, maybe even not even alumni. Just
number two, their contacts.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what did George Lynch do? He reached out to his contacts in order to start the initiative that he had. This had nothing directly to do with any of the Clark Atlanta alumni. He used his contacts, his agent, to get this stuff done. They know these people bring that cachet with them. That's that's number one. And number two, do they give them what they need and what they want? Because they're not going to. You're going to an HBCU. I'm sorry. I don't care how many years you're there. You're not going to have the facility that you had, Bo Williams, at a University of Alabama of 20 years ago, let alone what the University of Alabama has today.
Yeah.
at both the HBCUs.
And Drew, I think there is a certain level where, I think coaches who come in and can emphasize to the athletic department and help them maybe at times when things aren't available or maybe they weren't being made available, if they can stress the importance of, hey, if we can get this amount of extra time for individual workouts and things of that nature, or make the facilities available or make even a portion of the facilities available in later hours so that guys can get in after hours and shoot, those kind of things have benefits and they yield positive results later on down the line. So I think that's where you're hoping. But one thing I will say, and kind of I'll close this segment with this, is say a lot of these guys spent time as assistant coaches in other places. So I think initially I might have had a judgment in that these guys came off the professional court and then all of a sudden, said, oh, I can be a head coach. Well, no, I mean, most of these guys did spend a few seasons as an assistant coach. And I think when you've been a professional player, once you get a taste, I don't think it takes long. I think being a coach is, I mean to say this with all respect, it's not rocket science. It really, a lot of times, comes down to organization, being able to work with and relate with not only players, but your assistant coaches, as well as the other people around your program. So if these guys can managing the day-to-day functions of a game, these guys have been doing for years. So that part shouldn't be hard for them to pick up. It's the other stuff. It's the, getting in the mindset of dealing with all those other things.
Bryan, 90% of you know as well as I do, 90% of what you do as a coach is done before tip-off. Yeah. There's only about 10% that you do as a coach, and that is making substitutions, making adjustments. That's pretty much all you do as a coach during the game. Because if you don't have it in your game plan, I don't care how many timeouts they give you, you can't draw it up in a 30-second timeout or a 60-second timeout if you don't already have the basics of it within your system. Right. But I will say this, Bryan, the biggest move that any coach makes are those 24 inches from chair 2 to chair 1.
That's a good point. All right, AD, we're getting to the end of the show. Let's kind of wrap it up. One of the things that I thought about with so many graduations, and we want to salute all of the graduates from the class of 2020 across the HBCU landscape. Congratulations to all those student athletes who have gotten their degree. Congratulations to all the students, from the different departments and schools, whether it be your doctorate, your master's, or your undergrad, bachelor's. Hell, even if you just got an associate's degree, congratulations to all of you.
A certificate.
You did something positive for your life.
Don't you just
something positive happen.
Don't you just love the month of May, Bryan? Think about it. You start the month off usually with college graduations. Then that translates into Mother's Day. Then you go back home for high school graduations. And then you end the month with a cookout for Memorial Day. What better month is there than the month of May, Bryan?
Look, when COVID's not going on, it's really great for me because it's like I got a birthday, my dad's got a birthday, my sister has a birthday, we got Mother's Day.
You got a lot of broke people in your family.
Well, if we were spending, we learned a long time ago, stop spending money on each other. So we learned, so ain't nobody going broke, trust me. But yeah, in a non-COVID-19 world, yeah, May was pretty fun. But I'm telling you now, first half of May has really sucked. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Well, my April wasn't too much better, brother. That's my birthday month.
So one of the things I proposed to you, I said, let's come up with our top 5 moments from the past 2019-2020 year. And obviously, neither one of us probably, as we kind of compared our list, neither one of us have anything from the spring that happened, even in the short little period of the spring. So this is mostly it's the fall and winter sports. I didn't put mine into a top 5. I didn't rank them. So I don't know. Did you rank yours?
I went through after we talked about our list. I did kind of put a 5-1 on mine.
Oh, you went 5-1 on me. Okay.
Yeah.
So since you did 5-1, you give yours, and give a little explanation if you would, just a little brief. But I'll let you do 5-1, and then I'll rank mine 5-1. Go ahead.
My number 5 comes off of the hardwood, Bryan, and actually comes off of the women on the hardwood. Philander Smith and their tournament run at the GCAC, and capping that tournament run off with a blowout of the number 1 team in the conference of Talladega in the championship game. Philander Smith had 4 conference losses throughout the season. Those losses were to Rust, who finished number 2 in the conference, and Talladega, who won the conference at a 14-0 clip. So Philander Smith came in as the number 3 seed, defeated the number 2 Rust in overtime, I do believe, and then defeated Talladega. And I believe they had defeated Tougaloo in the opening round of the tournament in overtime also. So two overtime games. Even though the first one was here on their campus, 2 overtime games. And when you think they would have no legs left after having 2 consecutive overtime games, where they did have some legs there, and they opened up a can of whoop on the Talladega Lady Tornadoes in the tournament.
Unbeaten Talladega Tornadoes team.
I mean, they had 3 losses on the entire season, 4 losses on the entire season, something like that.
Yeah.
And undefeated in conference play, had not lost to another HBCU all year long. And to beat them by 30 in the championship game.
Yeah.
That
was on my honorable mention roll. So
right.
Yeah.
That was my number 5. My number 4, Bryan, was, speaking of cans of whoop, I don't know what happened at halftime, what kind of IVs or whatever the North Carolina A&T Aggies took at halftime, vitamins, halftime meal. But in the second half of the Celebration Bowl, led by Jermaine Martin, they opened up a can on Alcorn. The game was very competitive first half. A&T did go in with a slight halftime lead. Jermaine Martin, I remember it, had 19 yards rushing at halftime.
Yep.
And if I remember correctly, I believe he finished with 200 yards in that particular game. So, Jermaine Martin does what he does. A couple of big runs. I think it was a 78-yard or 80-yard run to open up it was a 75-yard run to open up the second half. And from there, it was on. So that was my number 4.
Hold on, don't sleep on Khalil Carter throwing 6 touchdowns. I think he buried the lead there. Khalil Carter, my man, threw 4 of them in that third quarter, if I'm not mistaken.
4 in the third quarter. I mean, between that and Jermaine Martin's run, and very competitive game. I think the 2 teams scored over 100 points between them. I think it was either 107 or 109. I don't know why that number sticks out. I don't have the final score in front of me. But they scored over 100 points between them. Yeah. And when you score 42 points, I believe is what Alcorn scored, and you still lose by 20?
Yes. Yeah.
42 points get you a victory 9 times out of 10.
Right. And when the final score was 60-something to 40-something, 62 to 40, 62 to 42 or 60 to 42 or something like that.
All I know is A&T won by 20. And
exactly.
Because I believe A&T scored on 5 or 6 consecutive possessions and 7 out of 9 or something ridiculous like that. I think the only time they didn't score in the second half, I believe they turned it over in the fourth quarter and when they took a knee at the end of the game.
Exactly. Unbelievable performance. That's number 4. Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
What's number 3?
My number 3 also features A&T, but it features A&T on the wrong end of this one. The overtime game against Florida A&M. This game was originally scheduled for Saturday.
Yep.
Was moved to Sunday because of, what was that, Michael? What hurricane was that?
There was, I forgot which hurricane. Michael sounds about right.
Yeah, but whatever hurricane it was, which, by the way, Brian, is the only reason I was able to be in-house for that particular game.
That's
because you and I were on the Edward Waters versus somebody's game on that Saturday.
On Saturday, right.
Right. I don't remember what it was. Both games were originally scheduled to kick off at 6 p.m. on Saturday. They moved the game back to Sunday.
Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, Sunday afternoon, 2 p.m. kickoff. Once we realized that they moved the game back, I immediately applied for press credentials, given the situation, to try to cover this game because this was the game of the year at that point in time in the MEAC. Probably still the game of the year in the MEAC. I think the only other game that came close to this game in the MEAC would be the Florida Classic between FAMU and Bethune as far as excitement. But for both starting quarterbacks get hurt in the second half.
Mm-hmm.
Both backup quarterbacks are in. Both backup quarterbacks do a tremendous job leading their team, coming from behind with each other. Game goes to overtime, and with A&T having kicked a field goal to take the lead in their possession in the first overtime, the touchdown pass in the corner on a third and goal, I believe it was. And I'm going off the top of my head, and I remember that because I actually, for some reason, I had my phone on and I recorded it and got over 20,000 views of the tweet that I put out immediately after that game. And one more thing about that game, halftime.
Oh, the halftime scuffle there?
Yeah, the scrum at halftime.
Yeah.
That never in my years of associating with Florida A&M University have I seen somebody take time away from the 100 like I saw at that particular scrum.
It's true. All right, that was good, man. That's a pretty good list. I'm feeling like my list is gonna be crap. I should have gone first. All right, what's number 2? Number 2 is the hole in the water bucket, as I like to call it. Virginia Union tries to run the water bucket play. You call it the hole in the water bucket? The
hole in the water bucket. There's no water in the bucket because it's all drained out. Was Tobias Taylor?
Yes.
Runs off the field as if they have too many on the field. Stops on the sideline. If you know the water bucket play, this is all part of the water bucket play. They hike the ball. They take off. I've never seen anybody run the water bucket play from field goal formation. Number one, I've seen the water bucket play ran from up under center from the gun, but I've never seen anybody running from field goal formation except on this day. I've even seen it ran from punt formation, but never from field goal formation. That's number one. Number two, Tobias Taylor is actually open.
Yes, he was.
When you run the tape back, he's actually open. Problem was, the ball was not within 15 yards of him. He was so far off of the video. I had to run it back to actually realize that they were running the water bucket play because I was like, what the hell is he throwing? Who the hell is he throwing to? What the hell was this play? I had to run it back. Did he fumble the snap and just try to get rid of it? No, This was a design play, Brian.
It was the worst. It was the worst throw in the history of fake field goals.
Second worst.
What was crazy is
Garo Yepremian.
they took the ball out of the hands, or they took the ball away from the best kicker in Division II football for the season.
What was it, 15 for 16 on the season?
The kid had the best percentage.
14 for 15, something. He's only missed one the entire season.
Yeah.
Has had, I know, at least one game-winning field goal that season.
Yeah, it was amazing that that game went that route. And what was on, and think about everything. You had a rivalry game, you had a playoff implications. I mean, it's amazing that happened. You're right. That's a pretty good number two. I'm saying it's a hell of a list, AD. All right.
And the one footnote about this one, Virginia State. This one makes this one really interesting. Virginia State came off the field knowing that they were in the playoffs because they knew they were going to be at least the number 8, if not the number 7, and got bumped out the last week of the season.
Yeah.
Because they did not have that last opportunity to impress the voters, while Bowie State was in the CIAA championship, got bumped out by Miles. Miles was on the outside looking in.
Yeah.
Miles was number either 10 or 9. I believe they were number 10 coming in. So you had to finish in the top 9 in order to get that automatic bump up to get in. So that's what bumped Miles in. Virginia State was bumped by Miles. So.
Wow. All right, here we go. Number 1, AD, your top moment from the 2019-2020 year.
Back to the hardwood, Bryan. The FAMU victory, I believe that was on New Year's Eve against Iowa State. Out of nowhere. On the road. Have not seen Tallahassee in 2 months according to their schedule. But they're like the number 300 and some odd ranked team against a top 50 Iowa State team. And they win. They narrowly defeat Iowa State, but usually you expect our HBCUs to fold late in the second half, especially after the last media timeout. But FAMU was able to. You can't even say hold on. They won the game. They took the game. The game went back and forth. Iowa State took the lead. FAMU took the lead. Iowa State took the lead. FAMU took the lead, but FAMU hit their free throws down the stretch. Iowa State missed free throws, missed jump shots. A hell of a flight back from Ames, Iowa on New Year's Eve, Bryan.
70-68 was the win in that game. And if you ever go back and look at like some of the stuff, the records that FAMU, I think they had like never beaten a Division I, or I guess
a Power 5.
Had never beaten a Power 5 team. Just all kinds of. It was a ridiculous historic win for FAMU. So, all right, man. Okay. So recap your top 5 just real quick. Run the list down. Your top 5 again was
number 5, women's basketball. Philander Smith running the GCAC women's tournament. Number 4, North Carolina A&T in the Celebration Bowl over Alcorn. Number 3, the overtime game, the game for BAC supremacy, Florida A&M defeating North Carolina A&T in overtime, the Hurricane game, the Hurricane rescheduled game. Number 2, the hole in the water bucket game, Virginia State, Virginia Union. And number 1, Florida A&M over Iowa State in basketball.
Okay. And in all transparency, I had 2 of those on my honor roll list, and I thought about all of those games. So I will say I thought about all of those moments, and so I'm kind of glad that you and I have a little different list here. All right, so here's my top 5. Number 5, football contest. It was our only 1 versus 2 matchup, I believe, all season in our polls. In our top 5 polls, it was the only matchup where number 1 versus number 2, and I think this might have even been the case. Anybody who had a mid, I guess if you want to call a sub D1 or I know Dr. Cavill calls his a mid-major poll, but this was probably 1 versus 2. It was Bowie State versus Virginia Union. The game played at Bowie State. Probably the winner of this game wins the CIAA North. Bowie State's undefeated. I believe Virginia Union had 1 loss to Lenoir-Rhyne, but they had already beaten Hampton earlier at the beginning of the season. So I mean, this was it, 1 versus 2. And Bowie, you talked about that can of whoop. Man, Bowie put it on Virginia Union 52-17. I mean, just destroyed Union. I mean, I expected a closer game. The previous years have been closer games, but this year, Bowie State was just outstanding. And I think that was the first of maybe 3 games where they put up over 50 points. I think the next 2 weeks they put up over 60 in each of the contests the next 2 weeks. So, I mean, it was like you just had this Bowie State hitting this stride that was just unreal. And you're just thinking, oh, my God. You know, and they really had me thinking that they could really make a run in the Division II playoffs. Unfortunately, that turned out to not be the case. But they still finished with a perfect regular season and a CIAA championship. So,
and let me throw this in about Virginia Union. They lost to playoff team Bowie State, playoff team Lenoir-Rhyne,
yeah,
top 10 Virginia State.
Yeah. Nah, that's not a bad season.
That's not a bad season. And defeated FCS Hampton.
Yeah. Yeah, well said. I mean, it was a good season for Virginia Union, just, you know, tough losses to teams that were a little bit better. But so I just thought the height of that game, you know, there was a lot of excitement and buildup, and it just turned out to be a complete shocker. So, you know, I don't know, just number 5 for me. Number 4 is more of a season award and a season performance. A little bit, you mentioned Philander Smith and what they did over the tournament. Well, I'm going to go a little bit even deeper and go, how about Benedict College, their women's basketball season? Benedict College, the Lady Tigers, finished their season 27-3. At one point, they had I think a 16-game win streak in the SIAC. It should be noted that they lost in the midst of a streak where they had to play Fort Valley State in 2 consecutive games. It's like, they beat Fort Valley State.
I think it was a Saturday-Monday split or something like that.
Saturday-Thursday.
Okay.
It was a Saturday-Thursday, if I'm not mistaken. They had just beaten Fort Valley. And then I think you even brought up the fact that because of the scheduling that this game originally, it was just odd that you'd play the same team back-to-back weeks. So anyway, they ended up losing the second contest to Fort Valley, but Benedict won the SIAC tournament, was going off to the NCAA tournament, and then all of a sudden everything got canceled. So they finished their season 27-3. 3 losses. Now, here's the kicker. They lost 3 games by a total of 5 points, AD. 5 points. I think they lost they lost to a non-conference game by a point. They lost to, I'm surprised I didn't even pull this up beforehand. But anyway, I think they lost a non-conference game by a point, and then they lost the first conference game to Miles by 2 points. I may have that mixed match somewhere. It may be the other way around. But anyway, 3 games, 5 points. Outstanding season for Benedict Lady Tigers. I'm still upset that they lost on our fantasy women's basketball tournament because I think they might have been the best women's basketball team in Black College. And if there was a Black College women's national championship, actually there is. I'd look up and see whether they won it or not. But that was just it just stands out to me. 27-3, 3 losses by 5 points. So that was my number 4 moment from the year. Number three was a FCS versus Division II matchup in which the Kentucky State Thoroughbreds defeated Jackson State in the Circle City Classic by a score of 33-25. And on a couple different levels, this was stood out for me because, one, here's Kentucky State, a team the year before that went winless. I mean, they had some pretty bad seasons the last couple of years. I mean, they had that brief little blip where they, somehow managed to win 4 games within the rules of the SIAC and found themselves in the SIAC championship game, right? But other than that, not a lot of success. In comes Charlie Jackson, the head coach, and I remember vividly talking with Charlie Jackson at the SIAC media days. He, along with Sean Quinn, were the 2 coaches I met with that I really came away so impressed. And I kept telling myself, these 2 dudes are going to have great seasons. I call them dudes. These two coaches, all right, let me give them their respect. Put some respect on their name. These 2 coaches were going to have a great season. I mean, because they were just so authentic and genuine. And I can just tell, especially with Coach Jackson, I'm like, this guy is going to turn things around at Kentucky State. And sure enough, first game of the season, they beat FCS Robert Morris. And then 2 weeks later, after a tough loss to Tuskegee, they had Tuskegee on the ropes. They really could have beaten Tuskegee in the following week. Then they go play FCS Jackson State. They're down 10-0 in the first quarter to Jackson State. And then they just put on 33 straight points. I mean, they ran for they put up something like 380-something yards of total offense, most of it on the ground. I think like 350 of it was on the ground. They just ran over and through Jackson State. By the time Jackson State finally started to score, it was 33-10 at the end of the third quarter. I mean, ball game over. I mean, Jackson State got a couple of late scores to make it look respectable, but the game was not even as close as the score indicated. It just was an impressive performance by Kentucky State and Coach Charlie Jackson. So that was my number 3 moment of the year. Now, I mentioned Jackson State there. So my number 2 moment is really involving Jackson State men's basketball program. And actually, it really isn't a game per se, but it's more so a player or a person. Okay, and what I'm talking about is the young man, the student manager who was a senior, named Thomas, with the greatest nickname, Thomas Snacks Lee. Can't make this stuff up. The student manager, he'd been a student manager, I think, ever since he was a freshman, I think was a story. So he'd been a part of the Jackson State program for like 3 or 4 seasons. And so, this is senior night. And I guess he or the coaches or the team decided to give him a uniform. And they gave him, every coach probably said, look, I'll give you a uniform, but I'm telling you, if it's a close game, you're not getting in the ball game. You know that speech, coach. You're like, hey, if this is a close game, you may not get in. He was probably just happy to get a uniform. And
just have to dress out and go through the layup line.
Exactly. He was just happy to be able to do that, right? He was probably still performing his duties as the manager during the game in uniform, right? But Jackson State, they got out to about a 20-something lead and worked it out where I think in the final 2 minutes of the game, Snacks gets into the ball game. And so the crowd is going crazy as he's going to the scorer's table. And the video, I still see the video of this, and it just warms my heart when you see it. Because I was Snacks, dude. I was that guy. He's a portly little fellow. I mean, trust me, I was Snacks. I was the student manager. I relate big time. And so I'm seeing this video, and I'm like, oh, go ahead, Snacks, get in the ball game. And so I guess he had been shooting some threes. I mean, look, it was like every time he got the ball, he was firing. I mean, no matter where it was, half court, I mean, he was pulling from deep. Anywhere he could get a shot off, he would get one. Finally, his moment came on, I think it was a steal. Ball kicks over to snap, and literally the quickest release I've ever seen. The ball hits his hands, and the minute it hits his hand, and it's by the bench, right in front of the coaches, probably about 25 feet from the I mean, well, he was at least about maybe 10 feet from the three-point line. So it was about a 30-something jump shot, 35-foot jump shot. I don't think he jumped, so it's probably a set shot. He catches it, fires it up, nothing but net. And the place goes bananas. The place, I mean, I'm talking the true joy and enthusiasm of what team sports is all about. And guys who sacrifice for one another. I mean, for his team, I get a chill down my spine just talking about it right now, AD, because it was really a very cool moment. And then what was even made the moment that much, you know, was seeing the national media take hold of. I mean, we see stuff like that because it's Black college stuff. We retweet it. We don't know who's going to pick up on it, but, man, somebody picked up on it. Next minute, you know,
it's on SportsCenter.
His thing was on SportsCenter, CBS, ABC,
Fox
NBC,
Sports.
Fox Sports. He went national. I mean, he did so much for Jackson State and the Jackson State brand because when they went and talked to him and interviewed him, I mean, he's just such a nice, relatable young guy. Real funny, real humble. I think he even went out to the Today Show, probably, you know, with the I think it's like the late morning show. So, I mean, just a lot of attention came to Jackson State, HBCUs, Black college basketball, and it couldn't have been put on the lap of a more humble and gracious guy, and he represented Jackson State so well through that whole thing. And then, unfortunately, Jackson State didn't get a chance to play in the Final Four of the SWAC tournament because COVID happens, and it just
went away.
The moment goes away.
Yeah. You know something? Maybe Jackson State should have let Snacks dress out as the mascot instead of whoever they had as the mascot in the BX SWAC challenge. You know, so that he doesn't get that penalty on Jackson State like that, like the mascot did during the BX SWAC challenge game.
Right. I mean, I don't want to call the brother a mascot, but I mean, you know,
no, I say he should have dressed out as the mascot because you remember the Tiger in the BX SWAC challenge got the penalty for taunting or whatever it was.
Yeah, talk about a that's how Jackson State season started, with the mascot being flagged for an unsportsmanlike because he jumped in on the celebration a little too early. That did go viral. So that's how it started.
It started viral and it finished viral.
Yeah. So, I mean, what a great year for Jackson State. And so my number 2 moment was Thomas Snacks Lee and just the whole viral sensation that he became. That for those 2 or 3 days, man, you couldn't tell that kid nothing, man. You probably couldn't tell that guy nothing on campus. And he's a great Twitter follow too, because I think in the pandemic, he's learned to turn this into a little bit of a thing where, you know, it'd be interesting to see where his career goes, because he took them 5 minutes of fame, and I think he'll forever be remembered. And that's why he's my number 2 for me. And so my number 1 moment is back to the football field, and it has to do with Bethune-Cookman defeating Florida A&M in the Florida Classic. And I mention it because 2 things. One, it turned out to be the 9th consecutive year. I think 9 is the right number. The 9th consecutive year that Bethune had defeated FAMU in that game.
They're starting their 3rd class.
FAMU was on a 9-game winning streak that pretty much, if FAMU wins that game, even though they're not eligible for
the Black College National Champion.
For the
Black College National Champion.
they're not eligible for the Celebration Bowl, which, you know, you would have had a hard claim for anyone to say that anybody was better than FAMU, who went unbeaten in the MEAC against every other opponent, defeated Southern, you know, in the SWAC, who went to the SWAC championship game. You know what I'm saying? So the only other team, you know, they would have been the first team to have 10 wins on the year. At that time, nobody even had 9. I mean, hell, FAMU had 9 wins. Nobody else had 9 at that time. So it was such a big opportunity for FAMU. And then they're coming off the previous year. What happened the previous year, where they could have won the MEAC championship last year, but lost it as well in the Florida Classic. And then for the way it ended damn near the same way as they ended the 2 previous years. And there was so much that happened in that game, and just that last 5 minutes of action, that it is mind-blowing. Mind-blowing that it came down to that. It created this whole controversy, you know, which of course, you know, we were well a part of.
And excuse me, where were we when the game-winning play happened, Bryan?
Oh, we were there on the sideline, there on the sideline, in attendance.
What were we at when the roar happened?
When where?
The big cheer from the crowd.
Oh my God! Exactly. So anyone who doesn't know,
In the media elevator.
We're watching a 3rd and 25. FAMU's leading. It's 3rd and 25 for Bethune. We get in the elevator to go down to the field, and we're thinking, okay, now's a good time to go down to the field. While we're in the elevator, boom, there's one noise, and we're like, what is that? By the time the elevator door pings and it hits the floor, you get another loud roar, which is Bethune scoring. So in literally from the trip from the press box down to the floor, Bethune gets a big play on 3rd and 25, and then on the next play scores a touchdown and has the lead. And so we come walking out to the field, and we're like, oh my God, what just happened? And everything changed in that moment. And of course, you know, a couple plays later, FAMU throws Ryan Stanley throws the interception, and it's just like Groundhog Day for Rattler Nation at the Florida Classic. But
it's deja vu all over again.
I'm telling you, but that moment, I mean, it's a great win for Bethune-Cookman. The 9-game winning streak. I mean, the enthusiasm, and I still think FAMU was the best team, just by nature of performance on the field, schedule, and all that other stuff. But they really could have made themselves the strong claim of being the undisputed champ, and they lost that moment thanks to Bethune and what they did. So that game, that moment really sticks in my head as one of the as my top moment of the year from the 2019-2020 season. So, all right, good stuff, AD. We got to make sure we put that in print. So maybe even clip. We're gonna put some extra post-production on this, because this was a pretty good list that you and I came with, no doubt. All right, any final words so we can get out of here?
No, just be careful as states are opening back up. You know, just because they say you can go, don't mean you have to go. And if you do go out, I'm about to say wear protection. That doesn't come off.
Hey, but I look, it's funny you say that, because I keep maintaining, I've been saying for the longest, people who are out here without masks, they like people who like having unprotected sex anyway. So it is what it is. Right?
But be careful. Take precautions. We'll just say that.
Well said. Well said. Follow Drew at BCSN Drews, where you can find him. You can find me on Twitter at DRB365. If you happen to be watching this on YouTube, make sure to hit like. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel, My JBN Online. My JBN Online. We are a part of the Jericho Broadcast Network, and so that's where you can find our show. You can also find us on Facebook. just by going to at my BCSN1. Right there, you see behind AD, there you see it, at my BCSN1. And you can find our Facebook page there as well. What are you doing there?
Trying to point to it.
Oh, trying to point to, you need like a laser pointer or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where you
It's
can
kind of
find
hard
us.
to point behind my head.
Yeah, that's where you can find us on Facebook.
It's on this
and
side.
the at my BCS1 on Instagram and Twitter. All right, enough of the plugs. Until next time, AD. New show next week again. We'll I think we're kind of planning to do a sort of student athlete themed thing where so maybe we're gonna get a chance to talk to some student athletes as well and kind of get their thoughts on some different things throughout the course of the season and year that they've had. So, all right. So for AD Drew, I'm Bryan Fulford. Thanks for watching a BCSN Sports Wrap. We are out of here. Peace out.
But yo, my beats, they are hard.
If you want fall sports, the best thing you can do is, stay indoors. And I think that's ultimately what America has been told for the last couple of weeks. And I know it's tough. It's tough for me. But until we can get this thing curtailed, it's only going to take more time. So if there's anything that you think you can do to get football kicked off, it is to stay inside. And if you stay inside, I guarantee you we'll have football. So the only way we're going to have football is, to curtail it. And the only way to curtail it is to quarantine yourself until we can get a handle on it. So everybody has to do their part for football. We're going to do ours, and we hope that you do yours. And if you do, there's a 100% guarantee we'll play. But if we don't sit and quarantine ourselves and social distance ourselves from each other, it could jeopardize our ability to play football in the fall. So this stuff is serious, and it's not going to go away by itself. We have to do our part. So I just urge everybody to do so.
Q Time is our classic Atlanta soul food restaurant located in the historic West End. Q Time Soul Food is a family business started by Fred and Christine Crenshaw. Come on in, relax, and sink your chops into our tantalizing, mouth-watering, distinctive soul food with a twist, the Q Time way. 1120 Ralph David Abernathy Boulevard, or call your order in at 404-758-2881. Do you miss your mama's cooking? Then come on down to Q Time, an Urban Passport member.
Let's face it, shopping for insurance can be time-consuming. That's why when it comes to your auto, home, and life insurance needs, make things simple and trust the experts at Allstate. They will help you get the coverage that fits your needs while helping you bundle your life, home, and auto policies. Bundling saves you money, sure, but it also saves you time, so you can enjoy the things that matter most even more. Contact me, Tammy Haynes, your local agent, for a free personalized insurance quote. Allstate, are you in good hands?
The Creole seasoning is a sodium-free and sugar-free blend that's versatile enough to put on anything. One of the first blends I developed more than 8 years ago, the Creole seasoning has an unmistakable aroma, a bold flavor, and a little heat for character. Every time I open one of these bottles, I hear trumpets and big band music.
The Cuvée Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience and engage them in conversation. We also help to expand their audiences, which will ultimately result in growth for those organizations. In addition to being a certified constant contact specialist, my colleagues and I are also certified in John Maxwell Leadership Principles. We use these proven principles to conduct workshops, training, and private coaching sessions for individuals and companies looking to take things to the next level. Contact us to schedule a free consultation. Issues today, don't delay, call Cuvée.
Are you hungry for authentic Caribbean food? Like jerk chicken, oxtail, red snapper, shrimp, tofu, and rasta pasta? Well, find your way over to Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta.
Them belly full, but we hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, open daily from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. And on Friday and Saturday, we're open till 4 a.m. Come to Mango's and put some spice in your life.
Oh, we've got a good thing going.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, 180 Auburn Avenue, right next to Royal Peacock in downtown Atlanta. For more info or directions, call 404-698-3992 or log on to mangoscaribbeanrestaurant.com. For instant coupons, text MANGOS to 313131.
Tell your mama hungry, papa hungry, brother hungry.
Mango's Caribbean Restaurant, authentic Caribbean cuisines.
Open up the door, tell your mama hungry.